Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by NBA futures analyst Brandon Anderson, and this is your NBA 2023 Draft Best Bets Part 1 episode. That's a very long title, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to do 2 episodes on the draft this week. I'm here to provide you with information on what I've heard from league sources, to give you information on what the scuttlebutt is, and a lot of this, like, we will talk about the process of this. I will talk about all the caveats on this type of stuff and how tricky it is. This is going to be also a how to bet the draft type of episode. We're going to explain the complications of it and why betting the draft can be extremely lucrative, but also really tricky. We'll get into all of that. There's 2 sides of this coin. If you're going to be talking about betting the NBA draft, well, first off, you need to be downloading the Action Network app. It's the best way for you to track your picks. You get all of our great draft content in there, all sorts of cool information. You can actually track number 1 through 5 best bets for who's going to go where, which I'll have a few for you in this episode. You can track all those in the Action Network app. Get yourself set for football. Going to be coming here down the pipeline. Brandon, this is like his last full week of working with me, and then he's shifting over to NFL. For a while until we get back into preseason NBA. We've got baseball going every single day. We've got all sorts of stuff, and the WNBA pods over on this podcast can be found in the Action Network apps, so make sure to check those out. All right, Brandon. So, like, there's 2 sides of the draft coin. Okay, the one side is intel, and that is I talked to scouts and executives and a couple of people involved in representation and a couple of people that just like operate in various things that are close to the industry, that are close to teams and the process. I talked to those folks. The other side of it is actual draft analysis. And like, that's what I think makes up the bulk of internet coverage, is like, here's his strengths and weaknesses, and here's what I think he's good at, and here's how good I think he can be, and here's his handle. That's why Brandon's here. Brandon is here to give me input on where guys should go, quote unquote. And I'm going to give you information on where teams feel like guys are going to go. That doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong, because theoretically they should be in concert, but they're not. And we'll talk through kind of like the reasons and the logic on those. The other thing I want to say up front, there's 2 key elements I want to get up front here. One, these lines that we're going to talk about are going to be a little bit stale for you. I cannot help that. These lines move extremely quickly because there's no power rating for these things to be tied to. If a large chunk of money comes in on Carolina Panthers -7.5, it will go to 8. It will go to 8.5. It might go to 9. It's not going to go to 15 because there's a power rating that it's anchored to. There's no such thing in the draft. A lot of the time they put out these markets at small limits, are just like, okay, we'll put this out there for you to bet. And then as soon as the market reacts, no market, in my opinion, Brandon, reacts as quickly as draft markets.
Yeah, I agree. Even to the point that, I mean, I'll say this, we're going to have on our Wednesday episode, our best bets part 2, yada, yada, the full title. We're going to have Luke Swain, Vegas Refund, on Twitter at Vegas Refund. And I've got my Twitter notifications on for when Luke tweets, because when this man puts out a tweet with the bet that he is making, you better have your app ready and get your bet in, because in like 3 minutes, that thing is nuked and that line is moving already. And that's how these things go. We saw a market open up today at FanDuel for top 20 picks. And we were talking about in our Slack of like, oh, here's a guy at plus 800. You better bet it now. And then like by the time you got the app loaded, it's down to like plus 320, right? Because partly it's that they're moving quickly. And also, they don't necessarily know what numbers to open these at. And so they're taking that information as soon as a couple of bets come in, and they're adjusting and getting those lines set to what the market is pricing them as too. So you've got to be ready to act fast. We are going to get these podcasts up, basically edited and up as fast as we can after them. And we'll try to kind of give to when we make a bet. I mean, more than ever, we try to do anyways, give you like a sense of how far would you bet this. But for me, when we get to my best bets, mine are long shots. I know that doesn't sound like a surprise. That's the thing that I am known for on here. Yeah. I don't know why I feel like I need to explain myself here, but I'm not going to be doing a lot of -150s and -250s bets. I think those are profitable if you know what you're doing. A lot of what Vegas Refund is going to give are those, because he's grabbing it and the number is already moving and it's about to move to like minus 500 and then just get taken off the board because it's a thing we know. Or it's a player's under or over and we know it's under and it's getting beaten so hard that then like the number drops from 13.5 to 11.5, 10.5, 9.5 and keeps moving. So I'm more on the scouting side. I'm more on trusting what I've seen on the tape, and I don't have as much intel. I'm relying on your intel, Matt, and on Luke's intel. So I like the long shots. I like to try to shop around, get the long number. And for me, I'm actually doing the opposite of intel betting on a lot of mine. I'm betting on uncertainty because for all the intel that's out there, there's a lot of smoke screens. It is smoke screen season.
Yep.
And more, especially this week, more than ever right now, is a lot of getting that information out. When that tweet comes out, we were just talking about a tweet right before we came on. Who put the tweet out? Why did they put it out? Do the windy fingers thing? Like, what is the reason that this information is being leaked out right now? And it doesn't necessarily mean the thing it means. It might mean the thing behind the thing it's saying. So you got to think through all that stuff. It's fun. You get to kind of decode and, like you said, solve the puzzle a little bit. But I think it's fun just trying to figure out these players and figure who's the right spot and all that stuff too.
We've had some great hits over the years at Action on various players that I've heard late in the process that are getting steam. We'll talk about some of those guys today, but like you talk about the smoke screen, a lot of times if a guy isn't being talked about, that's when I start to get nervous because my inclination is to be like, ooh, no one's talking about it. Maybe he slides. And then you got guys like Shaedon Sharpe, who no one was talking about, and there was all sorts of concern. And guess what? He still won 7. Another one, Ousmane Dieng is another one where like there was a lot of hype about him about like, hey, this guy might go top 10. Nope, he goes 11. Like we missed it by the hook on Ousmane Dieng. And so like we've had some big wins like on Keegan Murray, Scotty Barnes, other hits, and I've got some of that stuff for you. The other thing I would say is like, look, I am not talking to. Like, I'm not on the phone with Mitch Kupchak and being like, hey, Mitch, are you going to take it number 2? And he's not like, well, Matt, really, that's not how this works. Okay. There are circles and information does get distributed, but it's also like it's reading tea leaves, a lot of this, and it's an inexact science. And if you want to choose to believe that is total bullshit, I don't blame you. And you are welcome to either fade that information or stay away from the market. I don't blame you. Okay. But I will tell you that for me, this has been like one, I have stopped doing the scouting side of it for a number of reasons. To me, it's a very inexact science from the way that I look at the game. I don't have a great feel for college. And 3, this is like the biggest divide between me and Brandon is I don't disagree a lot of the time with like Brandon's going to tell you who's going to be good. Like Brandon will tell you who's going to be good in the NBA, and he's very good at packaging those guys. It is very rare that we get a guy that Brandon is not high on who's good in the league. Walker Kessler. But other than that, like for the most part, like Brandon's going to tell you who's going to be good. I don't really care. I'm like, sure, I'll deal with them when they get to the league.
Yeah,
like
you care starting Friday. Once it gets to Friday, you now care. Friday. Now we have a team. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But let's start right at the top here because we actually do have something to talk about and a bet to make, even though it's not draft related. Victor Wembanyama is going to go number 1. Shocker of all shocks. San Antonio Spurs are going to do it. My Scoot Henderson 10-1 bet is never going to get within remotely close. What's funny is how much hype Scoot has. I bet it blind just basically off of the idea of like there's going to be a moment where people start talking about the bad things about Victor and the good things about Scoot. And guess what? We had it. There was like when Vic got swept in those finals, there was like this, on the big men have injuries. Like there was a little bit and everybody's like, yeah, I don't care. He's still going 1. Like he's still amazing. It's still Victor Wembanyama. But I am talking to the number 1 Victor Wembanyama hype skeptic, not Victor Wembanyama skeptic. I'm going to try and be as charitable as possible. Nobody has been more skeptical of the hype about Victor Wembanyama than Brandon Anderson. And Brandon, you have a specific bet against Victor Wembanyama that you want to talk about to open up our show today.
Yeah. So let me paint the picture on the hype that we're talking about. We've all heard this, but it's been like weeks of conversation at this point. So here are some of the hypes that we've seen from Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer. Calls Wembanyama Gen Z Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, potential GOAT. That's what it says on The Ringer draft guide. Chris Broussard, if Wemby is Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, or Hakeem, that's a disappointment. What? I expect him to be one of the best players ever, a career like LeBron, Jordan, Duncan, Shaq, or Kareem. Okay. Woj called Wembanyama the greatest prospect in the history of team sports. In the history of team sports in the world ever existed. Like, the hype is out of control here. There's more of these, but I just feel like, look, he's very exciting. The talent drips off of the screen when you watch. There's no denying any of it. We've never seen anything like this. And it's fascinating to me just that alone, because most years, most draft cycles, when we see the guy that we've never seen anything like it before, usually we're mostly against that guy.
Yeah.
Usually I'm for that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'll even say it. A year ago, I was for that guy. He just was a white Minnesotan named Chet, and is a very similar sort of slight build, some injury issues, similarly elite defensively. Chad Holmgren, I was very much in the corner. And then Victor Wembanyama it's like, he's clear, he's a better prospect, very clearly. He has a much more offensive skill there, but it's fascinating to me. And I don't know, is it the international thing? We just saw what Jokic is doing. We've seen Embiid win an MVP. We've seen Luka be what looks like, future MVP. I don't know when the future is, but I think we'd be surprised if we can get one eventually. It's an international game now. So maybe, the French phenom kind of stands out. I'm betting against Wembanyama in a specific way, and that is for Rookie of the Year. I'm going to bet my best bet of the draft season right now. I'm starting it out hot. Scoot Henderson plus 600 to win Rookie of the Year. I think is a patently insane number to hang on Scoot Henderson. So, first of all, we just implemented a rule. It takes place starting a week from right now. When it hits July 1st, you got to play 65 games to qualify for awards. That matters to me for Victor Wembanyama, because this is a giant man. We know how the injury history goes with players of this size. He has a history of knee issues or leg issues. He's had the back issues. He played a lot this year, but the NBA is a different place. He has a very high center of gravity. That's how bodies work. He's thin. It's going to take some time. Even guys like LeBron, Luka, two of the other best prospects in the history of team sports, didn't make the playoffs right away. Like, it takes some time to figure this stuff out. So that's a first concern for Wembanyama is, does he even get to 65 games? Because of all teams in the NBA to play the long game and not give a rip about Rookie of the Year, it is the San Antonio Spurs. They are not putting this dude out there toward the end of the season to just get him a couple more games and push to win him a Rookie of the Year trophy. That is not the Spurs game plan, in my opinion. They are going to, I think, give him some rest games right off the bat. Like, they're going to treat him, to me, like he's like LeBron or something. Like, he's going to be taking a game off on a back-to-back here and there. And then all of a sudden, you miss like 3 weeks with a little injury. You took like 8 or 10 games off for load management. You missed a couple of weeks. We're in danger already of just qualifying to be a Rookie of the Year and getting to 65 games. So I'm starting with that in mind as already a significant concern. What do you think about that?
So, okay, the history of him is December 2020. He's got a stress fracture in his fibula. Not surprising. That happens that happens not just with big men. That happens, like, Bradley Beal had this, right? So I'm not necessarily like all that worried about that. Fractured a finger, no big deal there. Shoulder contusion, not worried about that. He had a psoas injury, which is, it allows you to pull your knee up to your chest in June 2022. But that's the last time that he had like a significant injury. So, like, I will say that usually when we have injury concerns with a big man, they're more, they've already popped up on the radar.
Yes.
So
I agree.
I don't necessarily know, like, here is a key question that we don't know with San Antonio. I can tell you what I've heard is that they're like, there was talk about Chris Paul. I've heard that talk was like really overblown. That like, they're going to be very patient. They're not looking to load up and win now, which is the correct way to go about it. Don't do what they did with Anthony Davis. Don't do what the Mavericks did with Luka Doncic. You need to suck for a while. It's fine. Like, suck for a while, get some muscle on the kid, develop him slowly. He's still going to be awesome. You're going to win. Like, you could realistically win like 30 games with like Keldon Johnson, Trey, and Victor. Like that can happen. You can do that. You can still be very patient with how you build the roster to figure out what you need specifically around him. So I think they're going to take that approach. I don't know if that's going to translate to missing games. They will absolutely tank if it calls for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to be like where that starts. Does that start at game 60? Does that start at game 65? So like you might be up against it. I don't mind your logic. I don't think it's like a slam dunk obvious. I don't think this is like this is wildly wrong, but there is a window here where you could be right that he could miss the required number of games for 65.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in play. And look, right now, the top 3 Rookie of the Year candidates by a wide margin are Victor, Scoot, and then Chet Holmgren, who is eligible because he didn't play last year. Chet is basically the same stuff we just said about Wembanyama. He literally has missed the whole season, plays for the Thunder, who we know are going to make the same sort of long-term cautious decisions. I would guess, look, this is not a Victor is injury prone position. This is a NBA players with Victor's body type in history have been injury prone. That it's a different position, but I would guess better than 50-50 that one of those two at least ends up not eligible to even win Rookie of the Year by games played. And then there's just the fact that Scoot is really good. Scoot would be the number 1 pick in a lot of drafts. I've watched like a handful of G League games lately. Scoot's explosion is great. He looks like a young Derrick Rose or a Russell Westbrook, not quite that level athletically, but I think that he was saving a little bit of it up later in the season. Just kind of like, I've already proven what I need to. He's got the pull up now. He improved a ton. He spent 2 years with G League Ignite. He improved a ton early in the season, flashed everything he needed. I think Scoot is going to put up numbers right away. He's already leading a pro offense as the point guard, and he's the engine. He's going to have the ball in his hands. A concern that I have about the Victor hype overall, similar to Chet Holmgren and why I ended up being a little bit cautious with him last year, is I don't see either of these guys right now being the engine of an offense. Maybe Victor can get there. You and I have debated this offline a little bit. Maybe the engine of an offense changes over the years to kind of fit what Victor would be. It's much easier, by the way, saying Victor than Wembanyama. So I'm just going to stick with that for a while. The engine thing matters because you need touches. And if he's not the engine of the offense, suddenly you're an Anthony Davis type guy. And if you're Anthony Davis, you need touches to get your scoring and get your numbers. Rookie of the Year is numbers, period. Rookie of the Year almost never goes to the elite defensive player with the amazing box plus minus and all the things that Brandon wants it to be. That is not what voter history says. Voter history says we want points per game, 15 or more, and 19 of the last 20, average 17.7 for Rookie of the Year. And we want PRA, points, rebounds, assists. I think there's a very real chance that Victor Wembanyama puts up something like, this is going to sound crazy to you, but like my guess for his line would be something like 14, 7, and 2. Like I think he's going to have games where he just doesn't score very much. And I don't think he's going to have huge scoring games. I don't know if that will be his role right away. And I know we see the dazzling shot and it looks great, but the results of the numbers have not been so great. I think he'll be a big defensive playmaker. He'll get the shot blocks. Maybe we'll charitably add that into his PRA-B for Victor and see if he gets that in there. But I think Scoot is going to put up like 17, 4, and 7. He's going to get to 25, 30 PRA with ease, assuming he's in the right spot. I'm a little cautious on, okay, where does he land? Because we don't know. We'll get to that in a second here. Maybe Charlotte. Well, if he does, that probably means Terry Rozier goes. And if that's the case, that's 21, 4, and 5. That is replaceable by whatever Scoot would be doing. If it's to Portland, I don't think he goes to Portland and Dame stays. So now you get Dame's numbers to replace. If it is the Pelicans trading in, it's got to mean Ingram or Zion or somebody went out in the trade, and now you have those numbers to replace. So to me, I'm very confident in Scoot's production. I think he's going to put up numbers. I legitimately think, look, I'm not setting the odds, so you can't hold me to this because I don't have my own sports book. I actually just think Scoot would be the favorite if I was making my odds. The Brandon sports book, I think that he is the most likely Rookie of the Year. I don't need him to be because I'm getting 6-1 right now. So I'm going to take the 6-1 and is my favorite bet. And I think that we're going to see Scoot's going to play in Summer League. We know Victor probably isn't necessarily, or probably would play like a game or two if he does. I think we're going to see a lot of hype with Scoot. He is the real deal. And I think he's going to be very much in the Rookie of the Year race.
Let's I want to get to the 2, 3, 4, 5 because that's going to impact your bet as well.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you this. Why are you cautious about Victor's scoring acumen?
It's partly the offensive engine thing that I don't know that he's going to have enough touches, and confounded by the fact that I don't really trust the Spurs to have a lot of guys to get him the touches, to get him easy points necessarily.
Because I think a lot of this is, how much Spurs did you watch last year? And it's okay if you didn't watch a lot.
No, not a lot. I'll be honest. Not high on my list.
So a lot of this is like, I really like Trey Jones.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Trey Jones for sure.
And like, what I kind of think about is, if you're talking about touches come from actions, right? The Spurs are just they're gonna run that pick and pop action with him over and over and over again, and teams are either gonna have to switch it, or because if they don't, he's such a lob threat with his size. He's just such a freaking lob threat.
Yeah.
They'll probably switch it, which means that he's got you in space, and that crossover pull up mid range is stronger than his spot up 3 work. Sure. So like, anyway, it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I
think I view Wembanyama a couple of years ago. You and I debated and ended up both losing Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Green. It was our big fight on Rookie of the Year. I think I see my concerns that I had for Jalen Green at the time is what I have for Wemby. I think he's going to be a highlight reel. He's going to have a game where he drops 27 and everyone is retweeting highlights, and he has crazy block, grab and go, 3 steps, dunk on the other end. But I think he's also going to have a game where he like gets 3 fouls in the first 2 minutes and ends up putting up like no stats that game because his body is going to just do that sometimes. I think he's going to have a couple Anthony Davis games where he played like 8 minutes and then picked up an injury because like a 300-pound dude dunked on him, and then he ended up not playing enough minutes, and that goes into your score line. I think they have a night where the 3 isn't falling because that's what the stats say about him. So he goes like 1 of 9 on shooting and scores 4 points that night or something. Scoot, I'm a lot more confident is going to just produce night after night after night. And it's just the way that the numbers average out. I'm confident his numbers are going to show. Vic, if I'm saying 14 and 7, it's because I think there's going to be nights where he only has 2 rebounds, 3 rebounds, where he only has 5 points or 8 points. And I worry that the bulk of the season and an 82 game award is going to end up that the numbers won't be there enough. And I'm confident Scoots will be.
Let's talk about Scoot a little bit here, because let's talk about 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a really interesting dynamic. The order, for those of you that need a reminder, the order is Charlotte holds the number 2 spot in the lottery. We'll talk about their spot as it stands in the draft, rather. They hold the number 2 spot. Portland holds the number 3 spot, looking to trade out of that to keep Damian Lillard. Number 4 is the Houston Rockets. Number 5 is the Detroit Pistons. Okay. So this dynamic is really interesting. Almost immediately, there was buzz about Brandon Miller to Charlotte. Like, that was like the immediate push, was like Brandon Miller to Charlotte, Brandon Miller to Charlotte, Brandon Miller to Charlotte. Mitch Kupchak in his post-draft interview said, we're in more of a position to draft for fit than we would have been maybe in some other situations, which is not saying that they're going to draft for fit. I just want to warn you right now, don't do this. Don't do this, Charlotte. You have a number 2 pick. You want to know why you had a number 2 pick? Because your team fucking sucked. When you suck that badly, you need to take the best player available. I used to be a fit guy. I used to do that. I've learned my lesson. Just take the best player. So like Miller is more of a fit for them because of LaMelo, which moves Scoot to number 3. There is like a whole lot of things that hinge on this.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I will tell you, has talked to several, like, there are several teams that are interested in Charlotte. The last I have heard, and this information is, I don't know, 3-4 days old. The last I have heard is Charlotte has not made a decision. They do not know if it's Brandon Miller. They do not know if it's Scoot Henderson. They are open to taking offers. If this is where it gets really fascinating. Charlotte had not had Scoot in for a workout and then got him in. And they made a big deal of having him in for a workout. Now, I think that part of that is probably like, hey, Scoot's really good. And as the draft evaluation has gone on longer, Scoot went into a dip and then has come back out of it. And now everyone's very high on Scoot. And especially the Hornets have probably noticed that everyone around the league, if you are trading into the top 3, guess who you're not trading up for? Brandon Miller. Guess who you're trading up for? Scoot Henderson. There are executives that have described him, at least in circles that I've heard, as like, quote, could be an MVP candidate at some point. That's how highly they speak of Scoot Henderson. I have no idea. I'm telling you what I've heard. So Charlotte now has the opportunity to put a lot of pressure on the market because Portland is desperate to try and get something for the number 3 pick. And the Scoot thing has been great for them because they're able to say, hey, you could trade with us and give us your star player and you get Scoot to build around. And they're talking to the New Orleans Pelicans with Zion Williamson. And they're talking with another team that I can't quite talk about, but it is for what I would tell you is an all-star caliber player. Like those 2 guys are on the table for those conversations. They've had other talks with the Raptors about Pascal Siakam. That's another one I can say has happened. They have talked to the Raptors about Pascal Siakam for the number 3. That's a pain because you're dealing with the Raptors, and the Raptors are like, okay, Pascal for Siakam, and you're like, great. And Shaedon Sharpe, no, what? No, like we had a deal. That's the problem with the Raptors. So Charlotte now has a lot of incentive to keep the pressure on to be like, we might take Scoot. You don't want and you're gonna have to give us more than you're gonna give Portland because our pick's higher. Like, if you really want Scoot and we take him, you're out of luck. And that, so there's a lot of stuff that happens here. Here's like the crazy thing. If Charlotte takes Scoot Henderson, my opinion is that the odds of Damian Lillard not being a Portland Trailblazer go up by like 20%, maybe more. Like I wrote about this weekend on Action Network. You can find the article. There is a whole game theory thing being played out here. And there is an intense amount of pressure that the Blazers keep trying to be like, we're not worried about it. It's going to be fine. And like, I'm just telling you that the closer we get to the draft, Damian Lillard's people for sure are making everybody known that like, you better get a deal done for that 3rd pick. You better not bring a rookie into camp to play next to Dame. So like massive amounts of pressure there. So the end point of this is a better Scoot's not going past 3. If you want to take a long shot on somebody, if you want to bet on, I don't think you should. I think it's going to go Victor and then some order of Miller, Scoot. I think that's like going to be the order here. Well, okay. I think it's going to be Victor 1 and Scoot either goes 2 or 3. Brandon, I will say this. I think if anybody in the top 5 falls, my opinion is that Brandon Miller would be the guy that would slip.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. That's the same conclusion that I've drawn as well is obviously we know Vic is going 1. We know this. The only other thing I am certain about in the draft is that Scoot goes 2nd or 3rd. And more likely, I'm beginning to think Scoot goes 2nd. I don't know. I'm probably not going to bet number 2 or number 3 pick because, again, that comes back to me. I'm not enough confident in my intel, or if I am, it's going to have to be a fire now because we just heard the thing and this is the pick, and then it goes quickly. So I think Scoot is going to go there. To me, on my draft board, which is irrelevant to any of this, but for me personally, Scoot's in his own tier. We got a Vic tier, we have a Scoot tier, and then Miller with some other guys. It seems like, from what I've heard and seen on draft Twitter and on some of these other lottery boards, it seems like Scoot is at least similarly placed on some of these other scouting opinions. That's why he's locked into that 2nd or 3rd pick. I think, too, a reason why teams are so gung-ho for him, in addition to the possible MVP upside, to the possible like athleticism and all the other stuff, the intangibles with Scoot are so good. People love this guy. Like, he's a leader. He's competitive. He's gonna be the guy that your team's social media is gonna post with that, like the X-rays of your lungs and then the dog in there. Like, Scoot has the dog in him. When we saw G League play Mets 92 in the fall, and Scoot went up against Wembanyama, like, dude tried to end him. He tried to dunk on him, and he got blocked because Scoot is 6'2" and Wembanyama is not 6'2". It did not go well for him, but teams love that stuff. Like, it's interesting with Portland because, like, for so long, the Blazers love Dame for a lot of reasons, including that he is the guy you want as the face of your franchise. by all looks, it seems like Scoot is the guy you want at the face of your franchise. And I won't comment about Brandon Miller, whether he is that or not, but you can Google some legal stuff and find out if you think that seems like a face of the franchise. I understand.
No, I guess that because this is really important. Look, I would say that the intel on that, like teams have done their research on it. And I would say that while there's never not going to be concerns when the player is involved in a legal situation like that. Like there's never, like, it's never going to be like, no big deal. Right. I mean, somebody died, right? Like somebody was murdered. I will say that there has been absolutely nothing
agreed,
to implicate Miller in any regard. He was cleared very quickly by police, and that the background intel has not like revealed more on that situation beyond like, I don't think that it's a zero in the conversation, but it needs to be like stated. Like, I don't think that's material to the conversation. And like, because of how complicated it is and the delicacy of it, we got to be careful there.
You're right. Thank you for saying that. I agree with that. I bring it up to say we have a lot of positives we've heard for Scoot. Certainly that's not a positive. That's all.
Right.
That's not a positive.
Yep.
So as a bettor who wants to bet on uncertainty, here's another of my best bets for today. And early on, right on the night of the draft, you and I talked about, I liked Brandon Miller to go number 2. At the time, it was plus 160 heading into the lottery, and it quickly flipped. I've gone back the other way now. You've got me convinced. NBA Twitter has got me convinced. Scoot goes 2 or 3. And if Scoot goes number 2, and if it's Charlotte or whoever trading up, now I'm going to bet on uncertainty, because I know the likely outcome is that Miller is just the next guy and goes number 3, and that's who Portland likes, and he fits. And like, Miller's a guy who's going to fit on every team. He's got length. He's a shooter. He plays on the wing. Every single NBA team needs that player. There's no reason Portland couldn't use that player, but there's also no reason that we know for sure that that is the guy they'd have to be in on. Like, he's not that clear of a number 1 pick in other drafts talent. So I will bet Brandon Miller to be the number 4 pick at 26-1 at our sponsor FanDuel. And again, look, he could slide further than that. So I can lose this bet the wrong direction, right? He could not be 2 or 3. And then I'd be like, oh, well, Houston didn't want him anyways. Houston wanted Amen or whoever the other pick was going to be. So I realize that's the downside of this bet. But to me, I'm going to bet on uncertainty. I never believe when we get past the top tier, that next tier that everyone thinks is locked in. You talked about, I want you to name some of the names now, names that you've hit big on in past drafts. Scotty Barnes, I think. Patrick Williams, I think, was another one that you did well on.
Yep.
To me, it's the spot. It's like that number 4 or 5 spot where there's a little drop off, and we all locked in on the guy we thought was there. And actually, that team didn't agree with who we thought was there. So this is a bet on if Miller doesn't go 2 and isn't who Charlotte wanted all along, that maybe slips a little bit. So 26-1 on Miller, just a nibble. I'm not going crazy here, but Miller to fall to number 4, not because of any of the things we talked about, not because he's not good, for no other reason than the draft is unpredictable. And we have 2 picks before that. And all I need is Miller to just not be the 3rd one and to be the 4th one.
the guys that jump, in my experience, and this leads us into like our conversation for 3-4, are athleticism. It just is. If you get guys young enough, you can develop the athleticism. It's one of the reasons why Scoot's like such a kind of dividing prospect, because the athleticism is absolutely unreal. The shooting is a concern. And like, you have teams that are just like, I don't know, man, this is a shooter's league. I don't know if I want Westbrook 2.0. You know, like, that's been a lot of the conversation is like, I would have loved Russell. I would have loved Scoot Henderson back in somebody said to me, like, I would love Scoot Henderson back in 2010. But the game now, because of Curry, has effectively changed. Sure. The only, if Scoot goes to, Portland's in trouble.
Yeah, that is a nightmare scenario for the Blazers,
because I don't know that anybody's trading up for Miller. Agreed. They might, however, trade up for Amen Thompson. That's one that I could see happening. That you could have a team that likes, because Amen, apparently, from what I've heard, has been killing workouts. That there are guys that do well in the pro pro days, there's guys that do well at the combine, and there's guys that do well in the individual workouts. And how much that matters really depends on what front office you're talking about. Because some teams are like, I don't care I don't care that he was grumpy when he was here for dinner because he doesn't want us to draft him. I'm taking him. He's the best player. And there's other guys that are like, I just don't get the right vibe from him. I don't think he's a good fit for our culture. I didn't like this answer that he gave. Like, there's all these types of things. Yeah. Amin has apparently been awesome in the workouts. And so, like, I think there's a good chance that Amin might move up. And that honestly is alarming to me because I have a bet on Cam Whitmore at 4. Because I had heard that Cam Whitmore is like, there was a number for him at under 5.5, and that got erased. I bet that, and it got erased. And now his number is, I think, 4.5. And so it might still be 5.5, but it's juiced under.
Yeah.
And so,
last I saw was 5.5, but like a minus 260 or something.
Yeah. It's a minus 260. And that's tough here. I do think it's interesting. You haven't been as high on Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
Why not?
So he's not a very me type of prospect. Whitmore is the explosive athlete part 2. Like, some of the things that we were saying about Scoot is what folks are saying. And first off, that's a bit of a problem for me because Whitmore played through injury a lot at Villanova and played in, if you've watched Villanova at any point for a while now, they are a team that likes to kind of slow things down and be very, very, very careful, take care of the ball, play the Villanova style of basketball. Whitmore is like the bowling ball transition guy that you want to get out and run. And Villanova, I think, was maybe not the perfect fit for that. I don't love his feel for the game. And I know that feels very nebulous, but that to me is one of the skills that I can't teach. Like, that's one of the skills I watch the most for, is just, do you have intuitive feel, IQ? Is your passing ability there? Whitmore has averaged 0.7 assists per game. Like, he would have a historically terrible assist rate for effectively a wing here to jump in. He shot not great. He's supposed to be a good shooter, but he shot 34% on threes, not huge volume. He also he's 6'7", but he's only a +2 wingspan. So I think, to me, Whitmore plays like a guy that's a 3-4, like a combo forward type, a guy that you might hope might play some 4 for you. But by size, he almost feels more like a 2 to me. And even by the style that he plays with, like, I think actually I've seen some people compare him to Anthony Edwards, who obviously is on my Timberwolves and was a #1 pick and is a great player. And that should be a good comp if he's that. But I think that's more the sort of player he is. And he's a downhill attacking sort of player. A lot of the limitations that I've seen from him are things that are not easily fixable. And I don't find that he would fit as easily into a team construction. However, I don't find myself betting against Whitmore specifically because of this. There are teams that I've learned over time who I have a decent instinct for, what sort of players they like. And there are teams too where it's like, oh yeah, of course, like not anymore because the Wizards changed. But for years, if I just had like a junior, senior blue blood player that I don't really like that much, I'll just put them to Wizards in my mock draft because they just took those guys. The Rockets don't take guys that I like. They just don't. The Rockets take different dudes than what I like. And the Rockets are 4th, and the Rockets are the team that has been rumored to take him or Amin Thompson, who has a lot of very similar elite, crazy athleticism, size great things about him, but questions about the feel. Those are guys that I'm lower on my board. They're guys that Houston tends to take. So I have to be kind of cautious with how to bet that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find ways to hedge with Whitmore. I do think that Whitmore goes no further than 5. That's as far as I think he slides. What I've heard is the interviews have not been great. I've heard that he has not been great in the individual interviews. Now, I want to be very clear on this because, like, agents obviously don't feel good with this, and anybody who's a player advocate is like, this is crap to put this out there. Look, I've bombed job interviews before. Have you bombed a job interview?
Absolutely. We all have.
It's okay. Some people don't interview well. Some people are great as I'm a better interviewer than I am an employee. I'm going to be real honest with you. So, like, it doesn't really matter. This stuff is not determinative of who these kids are going to be, what kind of person they are, how talented they are, whether they're a star, whether they're professional. It doesn't, like, this doesn't have this. None of this is real. Okay. So when I share that information, that the perception has been that that the individual workouts and interviews have not gone great for Cam Whitmore. it one does not mean that that's going to decide where he goes, because there are teams in this range, including Houston, that I don't think it matters for. And two, even if it were to impact his stock slightly, he could still wind up being an absolutely amazing player. Like, the draft is tough. It's a tough thing to do. So that said, let's kind of run down this. So Scoot Brandon, let's go ahead and say 2-3. Scoot Miller 2-3. Amon Whitmore, one of them goes 4.
Yeah, seems like it.
And here's what I think is interesting. If Amon doesn't go 4, I think Amon slides, because I think 5 goes to Jarris Walker if Whitmore's off the floor. I think if Whitmore's off the table, is not on the board at 5, I think the Pistons take Jarris Walker. If Amon Thompson goes 4 and the Pistons are there at 5, I think they take Cam Whitmore, and then Jarris Walker slides. And I already bet Jarris Walker under 5.5 or under 8.5 is what his number is. I like Jarris Walker to go pretty high here. He has done, all I've heard about Jarris Walker is good things. Yeah. And there are very smart teams that I've heard are extremely interested in moving up to get him. Jarris Walker is a guy I've heard that like teams want to move up to get. I always want to pay attention to those guys. And the reason is, when you start hearing X team wants to move up to take Y, that gets around in those circles, and other teams will take a look at them and be like, oh, it might be this guy. That happened with Josh Giddey, where like other teams were making a lot of noise about wanting to get Josh Giddey. And we were like, man, Josh Giddey may go 10, and he went 7. Like, that's how much this stuff can move. The 3 guys I think in that category this year are Jarris Walker, Derek Lively, and Kobe Buffkin. Those are the 3 guys I think that have like the most hype moving them up the board, because there are enough teams I've heard want to move up specifically to take those guys. So my kind of like equation here on terms of how to bet this is, obviously this is kind of complicated, and we'll have more on like trying to firm up this stuff on the Wednesday episode. But like, I will say, number 5 right now, the favorite is Cam Whitmore plus 125. You can still get Cam at a plus number. For him to go number 4 is plus 170. So if we want to say Cam either goes 4 or 5, and I think he does, you can bet either spot here and come out like a small minus number and be okay on that one. So that's one dynamic that I would probably look at. I do think that's pretty good. You can go get more complicated, and they do have first 4 and first 5 exacts now at FanDuel. So for example, Victor, Miller, Henderson, Cam, Amon, which I don't think is how it's going to go, is like plus 600. There's a number of these type of things. I want to get to one of your best bets here, because I don't want to move out of this without doing this analysis, and then we'll just mention it again at the end. Yeah. You like Ausar over Amon, yes?
I like Asar's draft potential to be taken ahead of Amon. It's another bet on uncertainty. Oh, no, I guess I'll own it. I gave you my draft board. I have Asar ranked ahead of Amon. To me, not on an intel. You just listed off. Give me the 3 names again, the guys that you feel like would be the guys you trade up for. You gave me Buffkin, Lively,
and Jarris
Walker. So I think Amon Thompson is in that group from a prospect standpoint, but only except that he might just be gone anyways. But I agree with what you said, that he is a guy that absolutely could go 4. I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody has Amon Thompson number 2 on their draft board. I would not be stunned. No intel, none. I'm not the intel guy. I would not be stunned from a scouting standpoint if Amon is a guy that someone trade up to even 2 or 3 to go get. That would not stun me. He's a guy that is like a freak. He will be a top 5 athlete entering the NBA. That's how good of an athlete he is. He's 6'7", 7-foot wingspan. He maybe will be a point guard. And if that's the case, and he has like, effectively, you're looking at like a Ben Simmons type player, but the good version, the one that still plays basketball, Ben Simmons, with hyper athleticism, can't shoot yet. Neither one of the Thompson twins shoots. We don't know how that's going to go. But with Amon Thompson, if you have a Ben Simmons type player, and remember the good version, the one that Matt bet to make All-NBA a year ago, that version, we like Ben Simmons when he's good. That version is a All-NBA caliber player, but requires a very specific team and a very specific construct. And I know draft the best player and not for fit. But once you get past those top few picks, that gets less and less. Now you're trying to take the guy that you need or the guy that fits into your scheme or what you're looking for. And I think you're right. If Amen doesn't go forward to Houston, there are a bunch of spots I don't love as a possible Amen's landing spot falling down the list. By comparison, Asar Thompson is more of a role-playing complementary guy already. That's what we've seen from Overtime Elite. By the way, Overtime Elite, just a little context for that. These dudes are both 20 years old. Obviously, they're twins. We're playing against a lot of 16-year-olds. Like, we don't really know what the Thompson Twins are. Overtime Elite is its own side program that we're getting there. We're figuring it out. They're basically just like playing pickup, running transition most of the game. But so far, what we've seen, Asar seems to have a better feel for the game, better like natural role player. He moves the ball a little more quickly, quicker decisions. He's a good cutter. He's been the better defender so far. They both have high defensive potential, but he has been a better team defender, kind of being in the right spot. Again, great athlete, not as good as Amen. Amen, to me, here's the difference. Amen has the better ceiling. Asar has the higher floor. Okay. And as I look at the top 10 and look at these teams, let me pull up the list here. Like number 6, Orlando Magic. Do you need a wing that could shoot some threes, hopefully in time, defend, fit a roster that works already? Great. Magic. Asar fits. Amen, I don't know. Different sort of fit. Pacers. Do you need a wing that can defend and just fit into your roster? Like, again, every team needs that player. Asar is 3-1 to be taken ahead of Amen Thompson. That would be an upset. Absolutely. That is not what we are expecting. Amen has the higher ceiling. But to me, Amen is a guy that a team maybe will love, or that some teams maybe just won't really have much on their board at all, where Asar is the safer version and a more team-friendly version. So, yeah, this is my final best bet is Asar over Amen. Again, partly on uncertainty in the draft. And like you said, with some of the Amen teams that may or may not work up there. And then partly on just that I think Asar fits NBA rosters much more easily.
Kevin O'Connor at the Ringer in his Ringer guide, he's got Asar ahead of Amen as well. So something to consider is like, I think that the draft nicks are going to like Asar more than Amen. And I think it's telling. There are draft nicks that work in the league, and like they have a very good sense for what some of the teams are on the board for. What's interesting about this draft though is you have guys in Scoot and Amen that I think you're right with the ceiling. Teams are more likely to trade up to move for them. But if you're not in the position of like we want to swing for the fences, if you're just like I just need a good player, then Amen might slide past them.
Yeah,
so that's really interesting. And the question there is like, would Asar go ahead of Amen? Like, if you're in that spot, or you're like, I really do. Like, how many people are not only like I'm not as high on Amen as everybody else, but I'm so high on Asar, I will pass up both Amen and these other guys for him to go. What do we think is like a floor for Amen?
I actually think that his floor, like if there were alternate lines and I could bet like over 8.5, over 11.5, I would probably play an Amen over escalator on like, he could be the dude that's kind of sitting in the green room tumbling a little bit, not because he's not a good player, but just because, yeah, I think what you're saying, like, look at like Magic at 6, Pacers at 7. I would have said this about Wizards. To me, they might be in play now. I think you take Amen if you're like, we got to just find a dude to be the face of our team and be our star. We don't have it. The Pacers have that. The Pacers have their team. The Magic have their dudes. Like, the Rockets have some dudes, but Amen fits really well to that roster as a ball mover, a guy with size, someone that can defend next to Jalen Green. That makes a lot of sense to me from a team building perspective. Now, I haven't figured out what the Rockets team building decision making has gone, but I don't know what the floor is. I could see him. I would be pretty surprised if I saw him fall out of the lottery. We haven't seen it. That's on no mock drafts anywhere. I think that he is almost certainly a top 10 pick, but I might be wrong too. We've seen these times before, like the Lopez twins, the Morris twins. the weird thing to me that's sticking in my head is these dudes often get drafted like back to back or like right in a row. And if I'm remembering right, I feel like sometimes the order we thought they were going to go in ends up being flipped and that's just like completely availability heuristic and all sorts of bias in that. So don't make a decision off of that. But I think these guys are going to go close together. I think Amon could slide to, I don't know, like 8 to the Wizards could be a possibility. Again, Utah, Dallas, 9 and 10. Those are not Amon fits to me. I don't see that. So now it's like, okay, well, now it goes, hey, this dude's sliding. We're sitting down here at 17, 20, 22. This could be a star. Let's go make a deal for it. And I think that's who ends up getting him.
If you think Amon doesn't go, if you think Amon and Miller are top 5, here's what I would say. If you think Amon and Miller are top 5, then you should bet Jarris Walker over 6.5 minus 175. Because there's only so many spots.
Right.
Now, I will say that I am skeptical of that. I think one of those guys falls.
One of which guys?
Brandon Miller, Amon Thompson.
Okay. Falls how far? Out of the 5?
Out of the 5.
Okay.
I think that's possible. I think that not even possible. I think that that's like how I would have it right now based off of what I've heard. But again, like if you actually got, let's say that you were just a casual fan, you ran into a guy and he wasn't worried about the information getting out. He trusted you for whatever reason. They don't, as a rule. But if they did, like they would tell you, like, look, we really haven't made up our mind. Like we have until Thursday. And so we're going to keep reviewing stuff and we're going to keep talking about it. They get in these rooms and they go over and they go over and they go over. And a lot of times there's disagreement. Like there's heavy disagreement on these things. Like I will tell you right now, the Dallas Mavericks are split on what to do with 10. Half the room wants to trade it. Half the room wants to draft it. And they are getting some great picks there, which is what I want to talk about next. When we talk about how the rest of this one goes, if we look at more of the, let's look at 8, 9, 10, etc. There's a couple names I want to go over. I have bet this morning Anthony Black 8 or 9. I do not think that he gets past Utah. If Cam Whitmore slips, then maybe that changes. But my opinion is that he does not get past Utah. So he either goes 8 or 9, in my opinion. So
and to be clear, those are 2 separate bets. You've bet them independently, correct?
Yes. Because there's not
yeah. His over-under annoyingly is 8.5 right at the line. So you're skipping that and betting exact outcome to 8 or 9.
Yeah. So I bet Anthony Black 8 plus 140, Anthony Black 9 plus 390. That's where that's what I bet this morning.
Okay.
I don't think that Black gets out of the top 10. There are some people that are lower on him. I don't know that I don't think that draft Twitter is as high on him. And again, those people, there are individuals that work in the league that come from draft Twitter. So I pay attention to that stuff, but I don't think that he gets out of there. Taylor Hendricks, I don't think he gets out of the top 10. I think Taylor Hendricks goes top 10. Derek Lively is a name that I reported this weekend and I continue to hear a lot about. There are multiple teams, including the Hawks, the Warriors, and I've heard soft things on a couple of other teams that want to get up for Lively at 10. The Mavericks are going to have offers. They're not what I've heard some of them, and they're not like, wow. It's like, hey, do you want to like move back and get a player and 2 picks? And that Dallas is not jumping at that because Dallas needs to build a contender around Luka like right now. But
and maybe Kyrie.
Well, now I'll say this too. The Suns getting Beal, that increases the odds of Kyrie staying.
Yeah.
That's one more team that's off the board. So it's down to like Miami, if they got crazy and did some weird stuff to clear cap space or did a sign and trade. The Lakers, who would have to find someone to take D'Angelo Russell. And like, that's about it. Like we're real low on Kyrie options here. Houston, I've mentioned, is I think a maybe. Houston, you kind of mentioned, by the way, this is what makes Amon Thompson like so interesting. It's one of the reasons I'm a little skeptical on the Amon Thompson Houston thing. There's already reports that they've talked to Van Vliet. I've heard the same. Like I've heard that they are ready on an offer. They have talked, like they were after Chris Paul. They are interested in Kyrie Irving. They have talked to Fred Van Vliet. I'm sorry. Theoretically, they've talked to Fred Van Vliet because you can't talk to anyone because it's tampering.
Yeah.
All of these point guards, they already have Jalen Green. Are you going to get a veteran point guard, draft Amon, and keep Jalen at small forward? Is that
Yeah,
the
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
right?
You're skipping past the name that as a listener, I want to make sure that we like where are we at in James Harden in Houston. That's been the thing we've been hearing for a few weeks. Are we moved past that now?
I'm not willing to say that it's not going to happen. I will say that what's been interesting is the pushback from both teams is that Houston, from what I've heard, is a little bit of we don't want to get played. We're not here just to get used to get the value driven up for James to get the contract that he wants from Daryl. And on the other side, the Sixers are projecting like, look, if he moves on, we'll figure it out. We got Tyrese Maxey. We're not going to do a max year deal for him. So like there's this big standoff here. I talked to, this is one individual that is not connected with the Sixers. This is just a comment I heard from a league person, which is Daryl eventually is going to give James what he wants. That's the assumption from some. Now, yeah. I will say like Daryl Morey, not extremely popular with some circles of the league. Me personally, I appreciate Daryl's perspective on things. In the very select number of times I've ever spoken with him. So anyway, that's one of the things that's weird with the Almond situation. Lively is a guy that I do think is in like the top 10 conversation. If I'm wrong, I'm going to get burned on that. I bet Lively top 10 at FanDuel right now. Derek Lively is plus 260 to go top 10. Brandon, help me out with Bilal's name.
I think it's Bilal Coulibaly.
Okay,
the hot international name.
Plus 185. Grady Dick is plus 250. I don't know why the market is still showing Grady Dick at this number and in this draft position. It's been very weird for me to see this. Grady Dick at another book is only plus 190 to go under 10.5. He's minus 250 to go over. I would tell you that I would put his number higher than 10.5. Like I would have it 11.5 at minimum, maybe 12.5. That's not to say that Grady Dick won't go 12 if somebody really likes the shooting, but I have not heard good things about in terms of where Grady Dick is at relative to the other names that are moving up the board. Grady Dick is not one of those guys.
I would just say to Grady Dick, Grady Dick is like you're getting like a Kyle Korver type. You're getting a movement shooter, and I hate comparing him to another white shooter. That's such a lazy comp, but like that's the game. He's probably the best shooter in the draft. To me, the number is at 10.5 for one reason and one reason alone. If Dallas keeps their pick and the Mavericks stay at their spot, Grady Dick has been what I've seen the most popular guy mocked to that spot. Now, I don't think Dallas is keeping that pick. I think Dallas all along went and tanked the end of their season to get that pick so they could trade and get the veteran or whatever they were doing. But I think that's why it's at 10.5 and usually look at the number. The number is not random. They haven't just like made a guess. The number is almost always right. That hook is right after a team that absolutely could take that guy. And when you're betting, you're choosing, is Dallas going to take him or not? And a lot of your intel right now is saying that Dallas sounds like that Dallas would move the pick and that Dallas may have other options anyway. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I like Grady Dick a lot. He's going to go, I think he's going to go in the lottery probably. Just everyone needs a shooter, but he may not be a top 10 guy. He's a floor versus ceiling sort of player.
There's one player in this range of guys that I don't have anything on, and I need your help with him. Cason Wallace out of Kentucky. I don't have. Now, he's repped by well-known, well-established, longtime agent Jeff Schwartz out of Excel, as well as like his team reps him as a more accurate representation of this over at Excel. Max Lipset and Marcus Monk are both listed as his agents. I haven't heard anything, and we mentioned this. Like, if I don't hear anything, I tend to exclude them. And he may be a guy that's just like in that range and winds up getting taken 9th or whatever. What are your thoughts on Cason Wallace out of Kentucky?
So Cason Wallace, the name you're going to hear attached to him, and it's the right name, is Drew Holiday. If you were drafting Cason Wallace, you're hoping you're getting Drew Holiday. And now that's dangerous because there's a reason there aren't a lot of Drew Holidays. Drew Holiday, of course, you want him because of the defense. The point of attack defender, guy that can, like if Cason Wallace is the player that you hope he's going to be when you draft him top 10 or lottery, whatever, you're taking him because you expect him to make multiple all defense teams. Assuming maybe not, because I think we changed all defense to not have to be guards anymore. But in the world where we have to pick 4 all defense guards, Cason Wallace, he's long, he's 6'4", but 6'9" wingspan. He's a great point of attack. He gets low, he's strong, he's a team defender, he communicates. He's a guy that sets everything up for what your defense can do. He doesn't have a lot of offense. So the shot is questionable. He's not super explosive or athletic. He's going to be a fine athletic guy in the NBA, but not stand out there. So as a Timberwolves fan, that reminds me a little bit of Chris Dunn from Providence. Back in the day where we drafted him, whatever. The Timberwolves drafted Chris Dunn hoping that the defense would be good. They knew that because defense is a pretty safe floor, but hoping the offense would come around. It didn't really ever do that. And now he just kind of bounces around as a role player. That's the worry with Kaysen. So I think he's another one where he could be a culture sort of pick. Like he could be a guy, a Caruso or a Pat Beverly sort of guy. But Caruso and Pat Beverly didn't get drafted. Like they didn't go in the lottery. They didn't get drafted at all. They like floated around the world in different spots before they got their chance in the league. It's dangerous. I love Kaysen. It's dangerous to draft a guard for defense and hope that you find some offense to get on the court. It's a dangerous play that's not gone well for teams. So he's a guy that I like a lot, but it's going to depend a lot where he lands. And he's another one that wouldn't surprise me that a lot of teams just aren't in on him because he could be someone that you just don't have the right spot for.
I wish they would let us parlay these. I so wish they would let us parlay draft positions. It'd be so fun for us. Kobe Buffkin. I just cannot stress the number of times I've heard that name in the last like 5 days.
He is popular.
Now there are guys that rise and then they get over-examined and they slide back. There are guys that get talked about and then they get floated in a lot of rumors because one team is putting it out there to try and generate a trade offer from a specific team. That happens. It's rare, but I've heard it happening. So like these things are complicated, but like the market is wild for Kobe Buffkin. Like it is a wild market for Kobe Buffkin at FanDuel Sportsbook. Kobe Buffkin's over under is 12.5. The over is plus 104. The under is minus 138. You can get him to go elsewhere. There are top 10 picks. For him to go top 10 at one book is plus 100. That's how low it is there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like, I think that's crazy. I would not bet that. I don't know. This is what's tough for me because I put out this weekend a list of guys I felt were in the top 10.
Yep. And
Kobe Buffkin is not in that group. If I'm wrong, then like I'm going to lose on like one of these, Anthony Black or Lively. Like I'm just not, there's no way I hit Anthony Black and Lively when there's only like 5 spots out of that top 5. But I do kind of wonder, I have been resistant to betting the market. I will say this too. The market reacted more to Kobe Buffkin than it did to almost anybody else I've seen.
Yeah.
Like he went from like 18, 15, 13, and now 12.5. Like it's been a drastic move on Kobe Buffkin.
Yeah. And from my experience, and I've only really been betting the draft for a couple of years, when that happens, you should believe it. Like when we've seen dudes like that, I'm trying to think of an example from past years. I can't think of a good one, but when you see a guy that like started at like a 20.5 and then starts dropping down and gets toward a top 10, that's not smoke. Like where there's smoke, there's fire, and something is happening and dudes are getting talked about. Jalen Williams, actually last year, Jalen Williams, the Santa Clara one, he's a guy like this. Jalen Williams, I think, started in like the 20s last year and then was popular and rising. And he was a guy like Buffkin. He was a combine standout. He was a guy that was getting a lot of momentum, and that number kept dropping. And it like the unders, I think, still all ended up cashing for Jalen. I believe he went 12th because it was right. Like everyone, the smoke was right with him. So Buffkin, 12 could be a possibility. Oklahoma City, again, like Jalen Williams, is the team that I've seen rumored a lot with him. He's a combo guard type. I've seen him compared to Derek White. I've seen him compared to Emmanuel Quickly. Those are very different players, but a sort of guy, probably more like a third guard, but a guy that can just kind of do a little bit of everything. And he's a name that I absolutely expect to go in the lottery at this point, which is hard for me, the scouting version, because Kobe Buffkin was a late bloomer even during the scouting season. He's a guy that you would watch Michigan for Jed Howard. Juwan Howard's kid, and you'd watch for other guys. And then Buffkin came on late in the season. So that's part of, we're getting that. You mentioned Koulibaly, the guy, he's the wing player on Wembanyama's team. Sometimes in the draft process, when you get the last word in, you sometimes end up rising the highest. Koulibaly just played games last week. He gets to make real game impressions where all these other guys have been sitting on their hands for a few months. Kobe Buffkin has that late momentum push. So I think that's interesting. I'll say this too. Over under on the Kobe Buffkin. There's also a Kobe Brown from Missouri that has a chance to go in the first round. Will almost certainly get drafted. Over under, I'm turning 40 in a week, and I am feeling my age on multiple Kobe's getting drafted in the first round of an NBA draft. Take the over on that. I feel old. How did we get here with Kobe's already?
Taylor Hendricks over is 8.5 minus 102 at FanDuel. I just want to say that feels a little heavy. Like the under is minus 130 for him to go under 8. I don't know. There's a lot of guys. There's you got both Thompson twins, Scoot, Victor, Miller.
Yeah.
That's 5. I mean, a lot of this is the Jarris Walker thing. I heard Jarris Walker early. I've been on Jarris Walker. If I'm wrong on him, if he slid down for whatever reason, and Jarris may be one of those guys that like everyone really liked, but then they looked at the potential of the other dudes and they're getting suckered in by.
Yeah.
Not suckered in. That's not.
No,
accurate.
I know what you mean.
They're getting convinced by that.
Jarris is not a star. You're not drafting Jarris to be the star of your team. Right. I predictably love Jarris Walker because to me, I think he could be like a modern Robert Horry. He's the guy you put at the 4 next to Chet, next to Wembanyama, next to Karl Anthony Towns. He's the guy that like, okay, we've got our small, like skinnier center, and we need a bulky guy to defend. We've got a more offensive minded center, Sabonis. We need somebody to defend next to him. Jarris Walker is the glue guy that does all the other stuff for your team. So the right team, I love the fit. But yeah, he's not the guy you're going to draft. You're taking the huge swing for. But yeah, I think he gets interesting. If you're going to be betting multiple bets at these top 10s and over-unders, you got to sit down and like make your list like Matt was just doing. List off your guys, because at some point, not everyone can go on the top 10.
Right.
Like don't bet yourself in a corner where you've got 12 dudes to go in the top 10 because sorry, it's not going to work out for you. So be careful. And remember, again, for me, uncertainty. Somebody's going to end up slipping in there or trading up or something that we were pretty confident didn't happen. And then now the domino effect, you can't bet the domino effect in real time with a draft, or we're just riding coattails by then. So you almost have to anticipate something going wrong and what kind of things can happen from there. That's why I like the long shots and the uncertainty stuff, but it's going to be an interesting night. The more we get locked into the top 10, you gave the list in your article. You said, here's the 10 guys. And without even seeing the 10 names, my head said, oh, no, it's not. Like, there's not 10 guys on Saturday before the draft. There's no way we know who the 10 are. So then the question is, okay, who isn't the 10? Who gets in? Who falls out? What's the reason? You kind of have to tell the story a little bit.
So I think you're right. I think the reason that I'm wrong is that there's going to be somebody that reaches in the top 5. And I think that where I'm probably off is Amon, because here's like what happens is if Amon goes higher, then Whitmore goes lower. If Whitmore goes lower, then Jarris goes lower. If Jarris goes lower, then like that's the sequence of how it slips. Like Hendricks, I'm just telling you, like I am always hesitant to use the word. I would be shocked if Hendricks does not go top 10. I would not be shocked if Derek Lively, who I bet to go top 10, does not go top 10, but you're getting 260 on him. Like there's good numbers, there's good value on him.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, like maybe somebody slides, maybe one of the Almond, maybe Osser slides, maybe Almond slides. We will find out. We'll talk more about it on Wednesday to go over best bets real quick. I bet Anthony Black both to go at number 8 and go number 9 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I bet Bilal Kublai at over 10.5. I bet Gritty Dick over 10.5 minus 250. I still think that's the best bet. I got a better number. I still like that number at minus 250. You can wait and they might move it to 11.5, and I would still bet the over at a smaller number. Brandon likes Scoot Henderson to go plus 600 because he thinks Victor Wembanyama sucks. Just kidding. He likes Osser Thompson.
That's for rookie of the year for Scoot.
For rookie of the year. He likes Osser. Sorry, not to go number 1 rookie of the year. Very clear distinction there. Oscar Thompson plus 300 to go ahead of Amon Thompson, and he likes Brandon Miller number 4 plus 2,600. We'll have more bets for you on Wednesday alongside Vegas Refund. Till then, make sure to check out the WNBA episodes. Hit us up on Twitter. My thanks to David Payne, our producer. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's get draft buckets.